Okay, so welcome to the US Chess School class. I'm Grandmaster Magesh Panchanathan, and today I'm going to be talking about some practical examples. We'll mix and match a few things, but I recently played, probably I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago. I played in Reykjavik, had some interesting games. So after a while, so I what's going on in Disney? What am I missing? Okay, so I wanted to share um some of my games. Anytime I have a tournament, I like that because it's fresh in my memory to talk about uh, you know all the decisions that I made, good things and bad things together, right? So all together. So more than that's what I was kind of talking about. So think of today's topic as more about practical decisions from tournament games. I want to show some mistakes. I want to show some good moves. Kind of mix and match all of this. Yeah. And again, like I said, whenever I play a tournament, I like to share that because it's very easy to think about or like share the actual thought process during the game and what good and bad things that happen during the game. Yeah. So let's start with this first position. And this one also kind of has a funny twist to it. So I thought this is something that we should start with. And we are basically going to try to make some decisions as we go, of course. Yeah. It is white to play here, and white played rook to b1. So I'll play white's move, and then of course we will start thinking a little bit here. But before that, very quick observation, which I kind of tell all the time. First, look at the position for a very quick observation to see what are the things you can see. That's absolutely essential before you start calculating, because that will give you some idea of what's going on in the position. In fact, most of your decisions would be made already with those observations. Yeah. You guys can type in chat about any of these observations. Okay, the pass pawn, absolutely. Very well advanced pawn on a3. Bishop on b3 is in a tough spot. Fair enough. White also has a b5 pass pawn. Not too dangerous at this point, but it's there. Lots of white pieces on the king side. Good observation, right? Either it can be very dangerous for black or it can be very good for black because black's pass pawn is on the queen side. That's right. Very double-edged, yeah. That's right. Yes, pass pawn. And okay, good. Usually in a game, this is done very, very quickly, right? I mentioned this before. When I'm calculating, I'm not looking at each and every position and saying, oh, you know what? Let's do this positional assessment. It's kind of happening in the back of my head. It's happening quite fast. I would assume that's what happens for most players. But it's very important that it happens, right? When we have this discussion, we can stretch it a little bit more, but just make sure you do that. F5 square, G4 and H3 overextended but aggressive. Okay, so basically the king side for white. Yeah, okay. All right, now let's start making a decision. So what I would do is, let's say I'll give you 5 minutes. I'm going to start a timer on my phone. It's time to start calculating. So one thing is kind of obvious. This is a position where you have to play some precise moves, right? In our observation, hopefully that is very clear. The b3 bishop is under attack. So obviously you have to focus on that. And the a pawn is pretty much queening. So that's also important, yeah? Sorry, guys, I'm switching chat just to me for now. I'll open that later. You can start giving me variations. You should always do candidate moves, Vihan. Of course, yes. But again, start with the candidate moves. So this is what I usually would expect in the first few minutes or seconds, depending on how challenging the position is. You're always kind of wandering around looking for different moves. Look at multiple candidate moves. Even after looking at the candidate moves, try to go in a little bit here and there, but don't go completely fixated on any variation yet. In about 2 minutes, I would say you should come to a conclusion saying this is the move I want to calculate. This is the move that looks more interesting. I'm going to spend the remaining quality time on that particular move. Aryan, okay. All right, Vihan. Sure, Megan. That's good, right? So we're about 2 minutes into the first point. So hopefully you've all looked at all the moves a little bit. Again, the way I would do it is I would look at a candidate move, I would kind of see the response, I'd see how much I like it. I look at another candidate move, see how much I like it, right? So I'm kind of wandering around to see what I like the most. And by now, I would usually be fixed on what move I'm going to play. All right. So if you guys at this point, if you have any variations, you can start typing. Again, small variation. Don't go too much in depth unless it's really forcing, right? By the way, keep in mind White's last move was rook b1, guys. So keep that in mind. From rook c1 to b1. So you should try to understand the context of the position, like context of the move, when you're thinking about what is going to come next, right? So I know a lot of you have a2 as one of your main candidate moves, understandably, right? I was one of the players, Wesley. I'll tell you which side I was playing, of course, as we go. This is from my game. But the reason I was asking you to look at the context is because White's move was rook b1, last move. And if you play a2, right? Do you think White's intention is to play rook a1? Probably not, right? Because if they want to play rook a1, I don't think they would have played rook b1 in the first place. That's why I said you have to understand the context of the game, right? Exactly. That's basically admitting that rook b1 is a mess, right? I should not have played rook b1, and now that after a2, I have to go back. That's possible, but you have to look at what the main move is first. Okay, Austin, I see your variation. Okay, Omen, I've seen yours. So that's your final variation, Aryan. Okay. Again, after a2, guys, I don't think I'm going to go back rook c1 or rook a1. You don't have to even worry about it. Don't calculate rook b1 or rook c1 because White's last move was rook b1. Okay, so I've gotten enough moves and variations. I think it's fair to say A2 is the first move that comes to your mind, right? Um, but unfortunately, it's not the strongest. Actually, there are some interesting games from Nationals to Aryan. I looked at some of the interesting games, but it's not about that because I have my games. That's why I went to decide to go into it. So A2 is a good move, but not the strongest move. Knight C5 is actually the strongest move in this position. And I was actually playing white. So, um, and actually I was also playing against someone lower rated, like, lower rated since like about 200 points or so. I was playing a FIDE master or so, if I remember right. And I had kind of got lost in the opening. So that's why you can kind of like see why my pieces are all sitting on the king side, which all of you, pointed out. What happened was I kind of overestimated my king side attack, and my opponent was able to easily handle it. And I never got any real shot at having a sacrifice or doing anything on the king side. And I got into a little bit of time trouble, and I let this position be like this. So by the time I played rook b1, I'm a little low on time, not like real time pressure, but I'm kind of starting to panic. Yeah. And I'm like playing rook b1. And so the main reason behind rook b1 variation is after a2, obviously I intend to play rook takes b3, not play rook c1 or rook a1, right? And what is the point after rook b3? There are, again, a couple of very straightforward variations to calculate first, right? When I'm running through the variations or candidate moves, I'll have two very straightforward. One is, let's say I take on b3, right? The other one is, let's say, queen, right? So let's look at queen takes b3. I think this variation a lot of you gave me. After queen takes b3, black gets a new queen. So black should be up on exchange right now because I won the bishop, you got my rook, and you got your new queen. Black should be up on exchange. But what is white's follow-up in that position? I think some of you already gave it to me in chat. If you already did, you don't need to. But those who have not given it to me, white does have a follow-up, right? Rook takes e6, correct. After rook takes e6, pawn takes e6, and queen takes e6 check. Now white has two pawns. Now, the difference has been about people have given me this, is more about the assessment. How do you assess that position? So let's say a2, rook b3, queen takes b3, queen takes b3, queen, and let's say rook takes e6, right? Oh, obviously, yes, I think Vihan has pointed something else very correctly, but okay, rook takes e6, pawn takes e6, queen takes e6. How would we assess this? Eric, you're also correct, yeah? So that's obviously the next point that I want to come to. And Jean, I think a lot of you have given me the correct move, obviously. Yes. At this point, everyone has found knight c5. Yeah, after rook takes e6, obviously you're not going to play pawn takes e6, but knight c5 is the main move, right? But just curious about the evaluation of this position. I think some of you are saying white has slight advantage. I believe early on someone gave me that black is still comfortable in playing for a win. Better for white. How about this? What if I ask you to give me a stockfish evaluation in points? Give me that. So let's see. We'll have a direct comparison to see who's the closest. 0.25, 0.69. Right. I don't know what. Did you mean 2.7? Okay, yeah. +1. So far, I think you've given me the biggest one. Anytime I ask for a stockfish evaluation, one of my students always gives me 0.00. Like, okay, not somehow stockfish will find a way to equalize. Okay, so this is clearly better for white. I would say so. This evaluation is about 4. White is just winning. The 2 extra pawns and this extremely weak king, right? So this is more about an evaluation. You should not be taking black side at all in this. Yeah. Okay. In this case, you can even think of it in a relative situation. From the starting position, that position is absolutely not necessary for black, right? But of course, you guys pointed out very clearly that there is knight to c5 here. Okay. Now what? So obviously I'm losing my rook. How would you evaluate this one? Rook b6. That's very interesting. I think white has only one realistic chance here. Every other variation, I think, should be pretty. I mean, not completely losing, but at least clearly better for black. Yeah, Vedant, that's correct. So Queen f3 is very nice, guys. Actually, let's deal with one move at a time. By the way, just to let you know, this we have gone off track. This is totally not necessary for black. Black had a much better variation. So this is why it's important that in candidate moves, you take a very clear variation and focus on that. Because if you end up getting sidetracked in any variation, that variation will be so rich and you will be calculating that so much, right? Aryan, you're right. So I'm actually going to go through this quite fast. So Queen f3, the problem is after knight e6, there is this really nice knight d4. See, this is very annoying with this knight, right? This knight gave the intermediate move knight c5. Now this knight will also give the intermediate move knight d4, right? Which is still again very annoying. But okay, this is still not over. This is still playable. Most of the problems with the situation is that no, bishop takes e5, there's check. Knight takes f3 is check, Austin. You cannot play that. After knight c5, there's also rook a6. Wait, how can I play bishop e5, guys? Isn't knight f3 a check? Ah, you just want to give up the queen and play. Ah, and you're taking the rook. That's interesting. I did not actually think about it. Let's see, knight c5, queen here. Takes, and I think some of you are suggesting you play bishop e5 and you play on. I play knight takes f3, knight takes f3. And you have only two minor pieces, right? Why is this playable? This should be lost. Yeah. If you have more than two, I would say you can play on, but this is no, completely losing. But anyways, let me go back. By the way, after a rook here, knight c5, this is again an interesting rook a6, knight b3, rook a1, knight a1. And at that point, actually, rook a6, let's say knight takes a6, and then you have bishop takes f6. So basically now you can kind of sacrifice an attack. But again, I'm not going to go in depth. I did not calculate any of this, of course, during the game. And I'm again going to take it a little bit back because we don't need to do any of this as black, right? Now, the other option, of course, is to simply queen directly. But this runs into a bigger problem. You will forcefully run into the same problem. I'll take rook takes b4. Actually, one of the main variations, right? Bishop takes. Now I have the same thing. I can take, and then play queen b3, and I have a double attack. So when you thought you solved this problem, or you didn't, yeah? When do you want to play rook c6, Austin? Do you want to play rook c6 at this point? Yeah, but I do pawn takes. And your d7 knight's hanging. Rook takes b4, pawn takes d7. I think you did exactly something. When I tell you what happened in the game and we talk about it, it's going to be clear. But we'll come back to this, right? So the point is, after rook takes b4, I have the same thing. So my only trick after rook b1 is that I can take on b3, I can take on e6, have this queen b3 to win the pawn on e6. Otherwise, I think white is simply in a difficult situation, right? But I'll tell you what I missed in knight c5. I did see knight c5 in the game, and I had calculated rook takes c5. And here, black has basically only one winning sequence. I had missed this during the game. I thought after knight c5, rook c5, I'm fine. Again, I give you one shot, so don't type anything in chat yet, right? And one shot in a variation. So Wesley, you gave it to me before, so I'll give you another shot. So don't type anything in chat yet. Let's say take 2-3 minutes, right? You need to give me a small variation, but I've told you black has only one way to win this one, which is what I had missed. Andrew, yep. The essential idea is no need to rush, yeah? Okay. Aryan, I don't think white will play that variation though. That is, yes, an easy win. But white won't do that. Basically, there are two candidate moves here. Gordon, that would be too easy. I don't think white will play queen takes b3. Yeah, yeah, a2 and bishop takes e5 are only two things. Thanks, John. Today, I'm just sharing some personal experiences. You can think of this as practical decisions from tournament games. I recently played in a tournament in Reykjavik, and I wanted to share some of the games and some of my mistakes and good stuff all together. So the question is, do I play a2? Do I play bishop takes e5? So in the game I'd calculated after a2, I am able to play rook c1. And I was quite happy about this. I won't play rook b3 or anything. I'll simply play rook c1. I was planning to give up an exchange anyways. And now the good news is your bishop is still in a bad place, right? So this I thought was good, and I was correct in this, right? But of course, after bishop b5, rook takes b3, right? And here, yeah, I think I missed this. Yeah, a2 is actually quite interesting here as well. But this is not so clear. By the way, the winning move is queen a4. I'd completely missed this. And I just don't see a way to stop this, yeah? After queen a4. I mean, I can always try to create some counterplay on the king side, but this is just done. I had missed this during the game. A2 is kind of interesting too, actually. I had missed A2 as well during the game, but it's not really the end of the world, because after rook takes, pawn takes, and I have still queen b3. Picking up one of the pieces, yeah. I mean, picking up the b4 piece. And it'll be two rooks versus three minor pieces. It's kind of very interesting with that extra pawn. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. But again, I had no clue. I had not seen this. I had only counted on a2 rook c1 after bishop c5 rook b3. I thought I'm okay. I did not see too much in there. So what happened in the game? I got super lucky. And this is exactly what Austin did. And that's why I said, whatever you did, Austin, we're going to talk about it. So my opponent played a2 here. He actually spent a lot of time. I was low on time. He had more time. He spent a lot of time and he played a2. So first relief for me that he did not play knight c5. Because after I played rook b1, I figured out that knight c5 is winning for black, right? When he was thinking. So when he played a2, I was like, okay, not bad. I have, I'm a little relieved. I'm going to play rook takes b3. So now the best is I'm going to be down in exchange for a pawn. And that's okay. I'll still figure out, and it's not too bad, yeah? And the next move he played here was a1 queen. At this point, I'm beginning to get excited. Again, he spent some time and he played this. And at this point, okay, you know what? I'm probably going to get the second pawn, because after rook b4, we saw that this queen b3 move wins the second pawn, right? So I play rook takes b4, and he very calmly played rook takes c6. I'm scratching my head at this point. I have no idea what I'm missing. What am I miscalculating? Is my opponent doing something? Am I not just winning a piece? Right? I'm taking on c6. He's going to get my rook anyways, but I'm winning the knight. Right? So I think a little bit, and I basically, of course, capture. He plays bishop takes b4. I play c takes d7. And this is a 2300, by the way, right? And I have made a mistake and they're making a mistake. And that's why I said practical games, lots of strange things happen, right? And he quietly played knight d7. So at this point, I went on to win the game. I'm going to show you that last part. We need to see that. And I was still wondering in my head, what could have happened? It's not like my opponent played something and I made this move that you can tell, oh, he missed, right? Like, for example, in my calculation, queen a4. Oh, I missed queen a4. That makes sense. You can easily tell what your opponent missed, right? What do you think my opponent missed here? What really happened? Can anyone guess? Gene, that's right. Yep, this has happened. Mind block. Well, all of that too. He basically miscounted the pieces. He thought he's up an exchange here. he thought he's up an exchange, and he like all these pieces weirdly placed on the king side, right? Of course, he felt so bad. Of course, he was completely better, and he was higher on time. He used up all his time, right? And then he quietly made these decisions to go into this and walk in here. Now I'll show you similar. I made a similar thing too. Hopefully, we can have enough time to cover that too. But yeah, so I got super lucky. Of course, you have done that too. Well, I don't remember miscounting my pieces per se. I have I have done different kind of mistakes. At least I don't remember in my memory where I just completely did not count. I know it has happened to some in games that I've seen very close, but this is the first time I think it has happened to me where my opponent plays something and I have no clue what's going on. Literally, like I'm sitting there, like, am I missing something? Right? I mean, did I blunder? Like, am I not counting the number of pieces correctly? What's going on? Like, I am having a reality check within myself. But okay, guys. So now that this fun part is done, I also have a fun finish. So I'm going to flip the board. Now we're going to look at this from white. I mean, at this point, obviously, I'm very comfortable. I know I'm winning. So I'll play a bunch of moves and we'll talk about how to finish this game. I played knight h5, bishop f8. So here, white to play, and you have to win. Now, the basic thing is you have to give me the full calculation, right? Whatever variation you're giving me, if you miss any of black's defense or moves, then I would consider that as wrong. So the point is more about accuracy here, right? White to play and win. I need an absolute finish. You have to see every move that your opponent can play and forcefully finish the game. Vihan, is that it? I like it that you're seeing it, but I want to know if that is it. Don't give me I think. You have to either be sure about it or you have to still calculate. Yes, Aryan, that might not help. Are you asking me, Vihan? You have to figure it out. And if you're done, you can say you're done. Again, I want to make sure I see all black's resources. Obviously, the starting should be easy. I think everyone should be on to the very first move and the follow up. I think it's not too challenging. Sefer, that's right. Sebi, that's right. You can tweak a little bit, but Alexander, no, I don't think that was my main move. I think that sacrifice doesn't seem to work. Vihan, you need to work for your opponent's moves too. Megan, that's right. Is that it though? So here's a test. If I ask a certain move for black, and you cannot give me a move in the next 30 seconds as a response to finish the game off, I'm going to say that your initial variation is a fail. Because I'll tell you one thing. Right now, I'm on move 36. It's a 40 move time control. There is a reason I'm trying to push you to make sure you have this correctly, right? On the 36th move, I know I'm already up in material. I'm not going to mess up and try to go into a winning sacrifice and miss a move that my opponent can do. So I'm going to play this move only for sure if I know that I'm winning. Andrew, you're starting along the right line, but how is that winning? I want to know how that wins. Can you continue on that? So why that's too easy? I think black will definitely do something better than that. Sunny, you're also, yes, Megan, I think you also have to probably continue. Vihan, you're right. Yes, see? So in fact, your variation, Vihan, you should improve it a little bit, tweak it a little bit. All right, guys. I think we have established knight h6 check is the move. Pretty much everyone's onto it. Knight h6 check, g h6, knight f6 check. Now black has two options. I can either go to h8 or g7, right? So what happens if I go king g7? Yeah, so you can solve this position easily. Now, some of you are suggesting queen f5 after king g7, but you don't need to, yeah? Just play bishop takes h6 and take the queen. Queen on c3 is hanging. Take the queen, and you know that variation is winning, so you don't have to calculate any further. Of course, queen f5 might be interesting too, but you don't need to worry about it. But let's say king h8, of course. So because of that, I have to go king h8. And after king h8, clearly all of you are recommending queen f5, which makes sense. I'm threatening checkmate. Now, black has only one defending move. My question is, how many of you saw that? I saw very few people write this. Most of you ended the variation here. Aryan, no, that's not it. David, that's right. Andrew, you're continuing on this variation. Very nice. After knight h6, gh6, knight f6 check, king h8, queen f5. Black has only one move. Muradhan, that's not the move. Wesley, no. Knight g5, I'll play bishop takes g5, guys. It's just basically delaying queen takes h7 checkmate. Knight f4 also, you'll take bishop takes f4. None of that. King g7 is the only move, yes. The point is, your f6 knight is not defended. And now you need to make sure you win. Interesting. How is that? Okay, I see Eric has found a very interesting move. I did not see this during the game or calculate this during the game. Let's see if there is anything interesting as a response. So the only problem is at that point when you play bishop h6 check, Eric, I don't have to take it, yeah? I could play king h8, for example, and I don't see a forced checkmate even there. So Eric, this is for Eric Feng. Okay, so at this point, all of you have zoned into bishop takes h6 check. Very good. That's the first move I calculated as well. But again, at that point, you're sacrificing two pieces, so you better finish the game. I need a win. If not, I probably messed up my complete win, and I think I can still make a draw somewhere. I was not too scared of losing this game, but I felt I could definitely mess up my win if I don't know how to finish this. I think Eric Feng, if you do that first and you play knight d5, might throw in knight f4 check and then run my king back. Or also actually, yeah, I think knight f4 check or something like that. Vedant, I think g5 I would take after bishop h6, king h6. If you play g5, I'll play knight takes. Knight is on e6 defending it, yeah? Yes, Vihan, you can play h4 too, but then black has some moves. Maybe throw in some knight f4 check or something. You have to calculate that. I've still not gotten a convincing answer, guys. So I'll do one thing. I'll play knight h6 because the thing is, knight h6 is not too difficult because at least I have a repetition here. So I could see that I have a repetition after king h8, after queen f5. This was, like I said, like move 39 or something. After king g7, I kind of repeated with knight h6, knight h5, knight f6 a couple of times to cross move 40. And then I had to find the winning idea, right? So, okay. I did walk into it with a little bit more of a gut instinct. I had not calculated the whole win, particularly because I had only four moves and a few minutes left. I had to finish the time control. So I did play knight h6 check. But here I took my time. Yeah, so for knight f4 is a constant move that will throw back some material at you and then try to escape. So by the way, Vihan, after h4, I can go back king g7. Remember, it's not a checkmate yet. Now, if you play something like g5, I can move my bishop on f8 and try to run out to f8 and e7 too. So you have to calculate all of that to make sure you're winning. And you have given a bunch of material already. Yep. Twice you have missed king g7. Okay, Kelsey has given me a long variation. Okay. So Kelsey, I think in your variation, how is okay, what am I missing here? I think Queen H5 is not a check in your variation, Kelsey. I think I do have a pawn on H7. By the way, you guys can start writing the variation from here. You don't have to write from the other position. But why is winning the knight winning the game, rather? I just go back, yeah? Knight G4, let's say, I have two options. By the way, after Knight G4 check, I have King H5 or King G7. You need to show me how you're winning against each one of those moves. For example, I'll just kind of play King H5 and see how you, I don't even want to give up my knight. Let's see what you do. Okay, David Jen, the first one to have the answer. Fair enough. Good job. Noisy Sefer has the answer. Very nice. I see two people with the answer already. Nice. Megan, I think G5 is too slow. I would still work with Bishop H6. Okay. I think Bishop H6 makes sense, Vedant, right? I don't, in my game, I did not calculate anything other than Bishop H6. I'll tell you that much, right? When you are calculating a variation and you're not sure if it is working, the first thing is, does your intuition tell you that it's still the best move? Then you still keep looking for answers within that move. If at some point your intuition tells you that, no, you don't need to do that, you can do other moves, then you will step back, right? My intuition clearly was telling me Bishop H6 is the move to go for, so I kept calculating that, right? But the first point of this calculation that I like to talk about here is that you don't want to just think moves. You have to calculate a little bit smart, right? The first thing I realized is I can do anything in this position with or without the H7 pawn, right? I started calculating with a little flexible mind. Like I say, okay, you know what? I can have any position I want with the H7 pawn or without the H7 pawn, because I can take Queen H7 check. After King G5, I can play Queen F5 check. That repetition takes away the H7 pawn out of the board. So I don't need to calculate this variation separately and that variation separately. Instead, I've just inserted that in my mind, saying that whatever variation, wherever the king is going, I will put that pawn on H7 or I'll remove the pawn from H7 for my convenience, right? That will save a lot of time. That's a very efficient way to calculate. Yeah. Bishop E2 check when? But your knight was on G4, brother, right? Did you do a different variation? Okay. So I think Aryan, you switched the knights thing, and brother, that's basically the reason why you can find the answer. So at some point, I realized taking away the H7 pawn is the winning idea. Yeah. So Queen H7, and then I come back. And now I guess some of you already figured it out. The answer is G5 check now. Knight takes G5. And before I play any move like H4 or non-checking moves, right, which is still possible, I wanted to find every forcing move first, right? Knight G4 might win if you repeat moves, right? Yes, you can play Knight G4 and come back. It's just going to make your life a little bit slow. But Knight G8 check, yeah? The whole idea is after King H5, there is Bishop E2 check. If you play Knight G4 check, I'll play King H5. And you have nothing but to remove, like go back. Knight G8 is nice because after King G7, Queen takes G5 check. And now I cannot play King F7 because of Knight F6 check. And now you see the absence of H7 pawn really makes a huge difference. If there is a pawn on H7, Bishop G7 and black is fine. But now I'm threatening Queen G8 mate and I'm threatening Queen H6 or Queen H5 mate. It's unstoppable and black is basically done. Had to resign, right? So one thing I'm noticing from all your response in general, I think maybe few exceptions. Some of you are very careful and calculated this correctly. I feel like you are not calculating as much for your opponent. I think the defense, and that's normal too. It's not like a very unusual concept. It typically happens. We are much like, it's much easier to calculate for our own moves and don't calculate enough for our opponent's moves. So a lot of you here were finding a little bit hard to find the exact defense for black. And then once you figure it out, that's when the real challenge happened, right? The real challenge is actually this position, guys. The question is how quickly you can come to this position in your head. This is the position you have to break when you play knight h6 check. The sooner you get here, the more time you have to actually solve this position. Yeah. Anyway, so that was a very interesting game. One that I should have lost, that I ended up winning. The next game I'll show you is something that I should have actually won, but I ended up losing. So this opponent, I think, he's either Scottish or Irish, is a 2300 player in this game, the one I played. So I will show you the next one. All right, this one I'll show you the full game itself. FIDE, guys. This is in 2300 FIDE is what that game was. So this game made me extremely sad. I'll tell you why. The reverse happened. I was completely winning. I ended up losing this game. And I'll just go over some parts of it. And then, of course, we'll talk about this. And so the opening was pretty straightforward. By the way, of course, I forgot to give you the context. I'm playing Ivanchuk in this game. And I was super excited, first of all, that I got to play against Ivanchuk. And I'm not a very professional player at this point. I'm more of a teacher. I do play on and off. And for me to get an opportunity to play someone like Ivanchuk was awesome. So I was like, my goal is to try to get something very creative, get a nice game, nice, interesting position. Obviously, he has a lot more knowledge in pretty much any opening or any position that I pick, right? Yes, I was playing Ivanchuk. And not only that, I was clearly destroying Ivanchuk. You won't believe it. And of course, I lost the game. So anyways, let's go on with this. The first part, again, the practical aspect, this is very nice. So let's see. I decided to do the double fianchetto before the game. Not too much time because this was a double round on that day. And the second round I was playing Ivanchuk. So I was like, okay. And again, he plays everything under the sun. So I couldn't really exactly know which one he was going to do. This is the second game, Vihan. The last game, my opponent was 2300. This game that I'm showing you right now is Ivanchuk. D4. And here, right, I started thinking a little bit. I mean, it's the most natural that you just take Queen D4 and play on. So I wanted to first try to deviate from very well-known position or change a little bit. And I also wanted to try to put something new. So I thought a little bit and I played Knight A6. And I had a little bit of a gamble in my mind too, right? So most of the Indian players are very well known for opening preparation. If you go into the Europe circuit or like you've seen most of the players, they're super known for opening preparation. So I decided to take a chance. I said, you know what? Ivanchuk doesn't know who I am. He's probably going to think I'm very, very, very well prepared, which I was not, right? So I was like, I'm going to play a new move like knight a3. Yes, the idea is to go knight c2 or knight b5. The whole point is I'm delaying taking on d4 a little bit, right? I'm taking, if you play, I don't want to play knight d4 and allow bishop takes g2. So if you play knight c6, I'll play knight d4. Or I'm kind of delaying this capturing on d4 because there is no e5. As long as there's no e5, I'm not have to worry about it, right? So he played a6. Now again, here I thought a little bit. And by the time I played knight a3, I decided I'll play rook c1. So I played rook c1. So the point is, again, very simple. I want to delay taking on d4 as much. And I want him to play either d6 or knight c6 or something like that before. So here, I think the most thematic move is b5. I expected this because I've moved the rook out of a1 and he's going to probably focus on that. And I was calculating something like c5 and everything, but I also suspected that he's probably not going to play that because he's probably going to think that I have a deep preparation on this weird knight a3 rook c1 idea and not play this. And he's probably going to play the safer d6. Turns out that's exactly what he did. And after the game, he was nice enough to analyze the game with me. And I asked him and I talked to him. And he said the same thing. He said, what is this knight a3? Is this some preparation? I'm like, no, I just played some random move over the board. And whatever I expected out of the opening, I got it. So here I played queen takes d4, knight takes d7, rook f d1, right? Well, it is important to understand this, right? When you're playing an opening, you are thinking about what your opponent is playing and what you're playing, right? I mean, it's not just what you are prepped and you're playing. You're anticipating something too. I wouldn't say it completely tricked Ivan Chukwihan. It's more like I got what I wanted. Okay, it's not like this is a bad position for black. Yeah, I mean he has played the hedge. This is a very standard hedgehog that probably Ivan Chuk has played a million times. So he played rook c8, knight c2. One thing I noticed is he started playing very fast. So he's playing it reasonably fast. Again, assume that he knows the position well. Knight e3, queen a8. Again, very known situation. So the only difference I know between the normal position and this one is that my knight is on e3. Usually the knight is sometimes on c3, more normal. But now my knight is on e3. And I said, okay, you know what? Let's try to make use of it. So there are a couple of moves that came to my head. What do you guys think? Very good, Angela. Knight g4. Vihan, yes. That was the first move that came to my head, yeah? I mean, clearly I'm trying to, exploit the g7 situation, of course. And here, the problem for black is the trade is not going to help. Like, for example, knight takes, you cannot take with the knight because b6 hangs. You cannot take with the bishop because d6 hangs and c7 hangs, right? So, Andrew and Kelsey, that's actually what I went with, Gene. Yeah, I think that's what I eventually went with. And here I thought, okay, black can also play knight e8 maybe. And I was not so sure how my knight on g4 is placed. Yes, knight h6 check is awesome, tempting, but I'll just move over, yeah? And at this point, I was not super sure about my knight on g4. Turns out this is still okay. I mean, white is still fine. Rook f c8 is also possible, right? Rook f c8, yes. What was it? Here, the thing is, I was thinking I can just take and trade off the bishops too. So the thing is, if I really trade the bishops off, d6 becomes real weak. So you have to kind of go back. You have to go bishop e7. And I thought trading this knight on e3 with knight on f6 probably favored white overall. That's what I felt. But like I said, I was not even not sure if I just pulled back. Yes, the rook on f8 is stuck, but I also was not sure what my knight on g4 is doing, right? So maybe h4. You're right, Vihan. I can play h4 and continue. I don't need to worry too much about my knight. But anyways, I went for the g4 idea. I was like, okay, you know what? How many times do you get a chance to kind of pawn storm Ivanchuk, right? Let's go for it, right? It's very interesting because the knight on e3 is defending the g2 bishop, right? And I'm simply going to play g5, h4, h5, and just like push the pawns up, right? So the minute I saw this idea, I was excited. Like I said, whether it works or it doesn't work, this is exactly the kind of game I wanted to play against Ivanchuk, right? So g4, rook fc8, g5, knight e8. Again, he went through this very quickly. I played h4. All of this very reasonable. At this point, I'm like, okay, I'm building a nice attack. Very interesting. He played b5. So here I took a lot of time. I spent a lot of time because I had too many options. One is I can simply ignore this and continue h5. Probably what I should have done. I think because if he takes at some point, I can take with the pawn. That's another advantage of the knight on e3. The knight is guarding the c4 pawn, and remember, it's guarding the g2 bishop against any pin idea. So if I can play h5, no bishop takes g5 kind of moves, yeah. But I will move over this, right? Yeah, this is a jog structure, right? That's correct, Vihan. I played this move. So my overall calculation at some point, I thought, okay, I am going to keep my structure good. And I'm actually going to play cb5. When he takes, I'm going to keep one rook on the board. And here I was trying to decide what would be the best move. For a long time, I wanted to just play a3, but I did not like knight c5 because I think I didn't know how to defend b3. I didn't want to play b4 because knight a4 will stop bishop b2. My bishop will never come to the long diagonal. So I ended up just playing bishop b2. When I saw this, I was happy. I said, okay, I'm playing bishop b2. And black cannot take the pawn. Why? In chat, very quickly, let's go. Queen takes a2 fails to... Yep, rook a1, knight d2. Not rook a3. Is rook a3 also possible? Maybe. Yeah, maybe rook a3 also. But I would be a little skeptical about some things. But knight d2, yeah, it's simple. Rook a1, queen b3, knight d2 traps the queen. And here he played bishop d8. Frankly, I did not calculate this move. At this point, I was kind of getting excited that my attack is getting good. I'm going to play h5, right? And he cannot play e5 ever. Just really weakens his central pawns, right? And I felt d5 is also terrible for him because the bishop on b7 gets stuck. So he doesn't have too many options in the center. So I felt now my h5 g6 or h5 h6 plan is going to be very strong. And he played bishop d8. Now, two thoughts came to my mind. One is this a very logical move because bishop d8, bishop b6, he's rerouting his bishop to an active diagonal. But the problem is he's kind of ignoring my attack, right? I am simply going to play h5 and g6, and he's moving one of his defenders to the other side. So while I thought he's playing something logical, I felt maybe something is off a little bit here for black, right? In terms of defense. By the way, of course, turns out Ivanchuk is Ivanchuk. Bishop d8 is the best move in the position. And he had assessed some of the defense perfectly. I was, of course, being very excited about the attack, so I did not assess some of them that clearly. Okay, so I played h5. And let's see what goes on. He plays bishop b6. So here I almost made a very simple mistake. And I will ask you guys, let's see how you guys deal with this. So I was trying to decide between queen f4 and queen g4, right? And queen g4 is not good. My whole idea is I don't mind this kind of problem because I'm threatening g6. g6 is extremely dangerous. But what happens after queen g4? What is the simplest solution? If you play bishop takes e3, I'll play pawn takes e3. That's playable, yes. What after that? If you play bishop takes f3, I'll play bishop takes f3 again, yeah. Bishop takes e3, knight e5. That's interesting. I might play bishop takes e5 and then still go g6, but close enough. Gordon, you're close enough. Queen takes a2 is very dangerous, guys. I'll tell you what is going on with queen takes a2. Actually, that is what I had calculated, right? So my calculation was bishop e3, pawn e3, and you go queen a2. I'm going to go something like g6. And it looked kind of dangerous, but maybe this is still there. I don't know. Because I'm threatening to take and go knight g5 and queen e6. All of them come together, yeah? If you play hg6, I think I can start with, I don't know if I can take. Again, things are getting a little crazy, right? But if I take, you're going to play f5, yeah? How does this go? I'm not sure even about this because I can go queen h4, queen h7, queen h8, queen g8 and try to go to maybe f7. I don't know. I don't know. Frankly, this is all a little crazy, right? Queen h4 and queen e7, Vihan. Yes, I can do queen e7. But I think if I play queen takes, I can also come queen f6 and give up one of my minor pieces. But okay, I don't want to get carried away. The main problem is, right? I spent a lot of time thinking about this and I realized I can easily stop g6. Black can just stop g6. G6 is not like an unstoppable threat. I mean, if you play g6, I'll take and you'll have a long problem with the diagonal. How else do you stop? f5 is also too dangerous. Just stop g6 easily, guys. e5 drops the d7 knight. Knight f8. Thank you. Yeah, knight f8. And the minute I saw this, I was like, oh my God, this just looks bad for white. If I don't get to play g6, what am I doing? I just ruined my pawn structure here. Queen takes a2 is coming, right? And I just simply don't like this position. So in the last minute, I kind of switched and said, okay, I'm going to play queen f4. The same kind of threats are still there. So here he made his first mistake. So here he should have taken the pawn. This is my variation. Still, I was still thinking this is going to lead to a very exciting game because I'm going to play g6 here. And here I think black has to be very precise because now I'm also threatening knight g5 to take the bishop, right? So this is very dangerous, but black can hold on. f6 and black actually defends. So here he played knight f8. This point, I felt he's taking this a little too lightly. My attack should be very strong. What move do you guys think? Do you think I should play? What do you think I can play here? H6 is possible. Anything else? Yeah, it's very simple is knight g4, right? That's what I did. I went knight g4. I'm threatening knight h6 check kind of ideas. I'm threatening g6. I mean, not g6, but probably, yeah, I think some knight h6 check ideas are very dangerous. Bishop takes g7. Okay, so here I had seen that he cannot, I mean, he's in a little bit of a trouble and he played e5. By the way, I see we're running towards the end of the time. I probably will need another 5 more minutes so I can wrap it up. What do you think? I think this is like very obvious. I didn't even take too much time. Andrew, yes, take it, sack. Of course, there's nothing to think about. I played knight takes e5, pawn takes e5, and queen takes e5. At this point, Vanchuk is shaking his head. He started thinking here and he realized he had blundered. And he was very disappointed with what he had done because he was playing very fast. And I'm realizing that at this point, I have to be winning. Before I was excited for an attack. It was nice to play. But this point, I'm like, I'm definitely winning this, right? Look at black's pieces on the queen side. Look at the attack. I think every white piece is doing really good towards the black king. And I'm threatening knight h6 check right now. So he played rook c7. So here, I will just kind of go over what happened in the game. And I will kind of go over my thought process. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to show the game that I recently played, because I can tell you what I calculated and how I made a blunder. Like eventually I made a mistake in this position. And I'm winning probably multiple ways here. And the worst part is I'd actually calculated the winning moves too, right? So the first thought process that came to my mind was, okay, I can take on b7. He has to take with the rook, right? That could be a good intermediate thing. So I don't have to worry about bishop g2 all the time, right? Because e8 is hanging, he has to take with the rook. So something like this, I had calculated. Knight h6 check, and then I thought, okay, this could be an awesome idea. F7 is hanging, b7 is pinned, right? Until I found a defending move for black. What is it? Black has only one move. Queen a7, very nice. The fact that I took on b7 worked against me now. Yeah, because the queen is now defending f7. If this move is not there, I'm just completely winning right here. So, okay, then I came back. This might not be the best thing. Then my main focus was some knight h6 and h6, all these ideas, right? So let's say I was calculating h6, right? Here, my main response for black I was calculating was knight g6. By the way, knight e6 is probably what he has to play, and he's still losing. Knight g6, I'm sure all of you guys can finish this off. Queen takes g7, I'll play knight takes g7. Probably also winning. But it's something easier than that. It's easier than that. Queen e8, thank you. The same idea. And you're simply winning because you're threatening knight f6 as a fork and knight h6. Unfortunately, I didn't see this, which is like ridiculous now if you think about it. I saw queen e8, and I was so focused on just the checkmate. And I thought white can play h6 or g6, f6, and then run out of this checkmate. So they'll play h6, and after take, they'll play f6 or something like that. My mind stopped calculating that I'm actually winning the rook, winning the queen. In fact, I also missed in a lot of places. I'm queening this because there is no rook on the 8th rank. So I was just calculating to a point where I'm trying to finish off the game with a checkmate, and I stopped calculating some of these things. But in my defense, I had calculated the second best move, which is queen takes b5, and I saw this is winning. I felt I should be very comfortable, and b6 is hanging. Next move, pawn takes g7 is threatened, and I thought white is winning, and I saw this. Then at some point, I also calculated this. Was it not g6? I think maybe some knight h6 check ideas. I'm trying to remember what it was. So some variations where black will try to play f6 and try to bring the rook in. And I felt keeping the bishop on g2 useful. Like somewhere rook g7 will end up being a check. If it's not a check, I can, if it's in a pin and they're just kind of blocking, I'll play h6 or something like that in one of those variations, right? So I spent about 10 minutes. I'm thinking, and I probably had about 15 minutes or so here. I'm thinking about 10 minutes. I know I'm winning this position. I just need to find the best move. And I've also found h6. H6 is the winning move, by the way, by far. And suddenly it came to my mind that if I don't take on b7, right? If I simply attack the f7 pawn with queen f5, then he cannot play queen a7. And if he ends up playing f6, I take. And I'm threatening pawn takes g7, and this looks like it's pretty much game over. I saw this and I got super excited. Why do I need to play h6? This looks like it's winning, and I played this instantly. And I played this so quickly as after I saw it. I played this, and now I started thinking, what am I actually threatening? And I'm threatening nothing. This is unbelievably stupid. Yeah, I cannot believe what I did. Literally, after playing the move, I look at the board. If he takes my bishop, what am I threatening? Knight f7 check, he just goes back king g8. I've confused the variation where my queen was on d5, where after knight f7, rook f7 was forced. Right? Look at how different kind of problems can happen in your calculation, right? When the queen was on d5, remember the first variation I told you, where I play bishop takes, rook takes, and queen d5. There, after knight f7, king cannot go to g8. But here, king simply can go to g8 after knight f7. I forgot about it. But the most important mistake I want to share here is that I became very impulsive. Again, it's very important not to panic. I spent about 10 minutes in this position thinking about all these variations, right? But I made the decision in a split second. So even though you think long enough, sometimes you might think, wait, I actually spent a lot of time in a move. That doesn't change the fact that you made an impulsive decision. So this is the perfect example for it, right? With the 10 minutes, this queen f5 move, I probably spent like 10 seconds. And I went ahead and played it because it excited me suddenly, saying, oh, they cannot play queen a7. The bishop is still on b7. Awesome, I'm winning. And I played it. And after bishop g2, I already realized I'm losing. I have nothing. I have nothing here, literally. So I played something like bishop takes g7 check, try to hope that you get some kind of drawn possibility, knight takes f7 check, and he simply, it's too much material, right? Too many. I have 4 minor pieces for a rook. I played a few more moves, but I'm just lost. Here I had to resign. But yeah, it was extremely heartbreaking because I'm winning and I had seen it. How many times do I get to play against Ivanchuk? And how many times do I get a winning position against Ivanchuk, right? So I was like, I couldn't sleep that night. But that's how. Yep. Yep. He was, like I said, he was very kind enough to analyze the game after that. And he was pointing out that probably most of the moves are winning. only makes things worse, right? Exactly. Austin's right in pointing out, saying last game, you saw that how my opponent was completely winning and he handed it to me in a platter, right? I mean, like I didn't even do anything. And this is what I did in this game. So 2 games, opposite side, right? It's not like queen f5 is something where I missed my opponent's move. You see what happened here is I beat myself up with my own confusion. This is nothing to do with me not seeing white's move. After queen f5, it's not like I did not see white's response. Sorry, black's response, right? I kind of got confused in my head. And I played something that didn't make any sense at all. That's what my opponent did in the previous game I showed you guys. Yeah. Well, the point is, in practical games, calculation can be very tricky. It's not easy. It's always easy to look at it from outside and point out to say this is the right move, that's the right move. When you have to make a decision and you have time ticking down, it's always tricky, right? But you have to keep observing these kind of things. Try to keep coming back and say, okay, I made this mistake. So in this tournament, I noticed this. I made this mistake at least 3 different times, where I spent 15 minutes in the clock, but I made an impulsive decision with 10, 15 seconds. And all of those moves turned out to be a blunder. And some of them I got lucky. I did not lose the game. This one I lost the game. But that analysis is what I want you all to think about. When you go to a tournament, you come back, I want you to think about, what is going on in your head, how you're making these mistakes, right? The theme is not, that's not the theme we are. All right, guys, I think this is a good time for us to wrap up. Thank you, everyone. If you get a chance to play against Ivanchuk, do not blunder. That's the theme of the class. Yeah. All right. Bye.